Baseball is often dubbed America's pastime, a game that's rich with tradition and folklore, where legends are born, records are shattered, and something never before seen occurs on a daily basis. However, lurking beneath the shimmering stories of triumph and glory are tales of heartbreak and series of unfortunate events. In this video, we'll explore some of the most notable instances of bad luck that have shaped the narratives of teams and left lasting impressions on the sport, reminding us that sometimes it's not just talent that makes the difference, it's a little bit of luck, or the lack thereof. As of November 2024, there have been only 24 perfect games thrown in MLB history. However, there would be 25 if not for what has got to be the worst umpire decision of all time. On June 2, 2010, Armando Galarraga, starting pitcher for the Detroit Tigers, looked to be in elite form during his game against the Cleveland Indians. He was in complete command, quickly dispatching batters with a mix of fastballs and breaking pitches. By the time he reached the 9th inning, Galarraga had retired 26 consecutive hitters, with nobody having reached a single base. The scene at the Tigers' Comerica Park was electric, as Galarraga stood 60 feet and 6 inches away from the Indians' infielder, Jason Donald, with 2 outs and nobody on in base the 9th inning. He was just 1 out away from producing a perfect game. Galarraga worked a 1-1 count against Donald before throwing a perfectly placed slider on the outside corner that Donald got weak contact on. Tigers first baseman Miguel Cabrera had to range a good deal to his right in order to corral the soft grounder. However, he fielded the ball cleanly and tossed the ball to Galarraga, who appears to have beaten the speedy Donald to first base by at least half of a step. Everybody in the stadium and watching at home could have seen that Galarraga beat Donald to the bag, which should have finalized his perfect game. However, the one person who saw it differently was first base umpire Jim Joyce, who called Donald safe. The entire park went from shock to outrage in the call's aftermath, as the replay footage showed that Donald was clearly out and Galarraga deserved his perfect game. In fact, the only person in Comerica Park who kept their poise the most after this horribly unlucky call was Galarraga himself, who could do nothing but smile at Joyce before walking back to the mound and retiring the next hitter to conclude the single greatest performance of his life, concluding a 3-0 victory for his Tigers. In the days that followed, Jim Joyce publicly acknowledged his mistake, expressing deep regret for his missed call and its impact on Galarraga's career. Joyce's admission garnered a wave of sympathy and respect, highlighting the human element of the game, although some fans have never forgiven him for this massive mistake. Former MLB Commissioner Bud Selig even considered retroactively overturning the call after it happened, but ultimately decided against it, leaving Galarraga's near-perfect game as an anomaly in baseball history. This incident was doubly unlucky for Galarraga, given its timing. If this near-perfect game occurred just 4 years later, the call would have been overturned because MLB began using instant replay to get safe and out calls on the base paths right in 2014. Then again, Joyce's botched call was surely one of the prime examples of why instant replay is an absolute necessity in the sport. Despite falling short of perfection, Galarraga earned the admiration of fans and fellow players, and his performance on that day is still celebrated as one of the greatest near misses in baseball lore. His experience serves as a testament to the unpredictable nature of the sport and how, in the world of baseball, even near perfection can become a poignant part of a player's legacy. Umpires are often at the center of some of MLB's unluckiest moments. In Galarraga's case, it was Joyce making a horrific mental mishap. But in this next unlucky moment, the umpire's fumble was much more physical. On July 30th, 2022, the San Diego Padres faced off against the Minnesota Twins in San Diego. In the bottom of the 7th inning, Padres slugger Jurickson Profar approached the plate with 1 out and a runner on second base, while his team was down 2-1. Despite being down 0-2 in the count, Profar lined a curveball up the middle that seemed destined to be an easy base hit, score the runner at second, and tie the game until it struck second base umpire Jerry Lane directly in the leg. MLB's rule in this situation is that the ball, if it's fair, is immediately ruled dead if it touches an umpire before touching another player. It is then deemed interference, and the hitter gets to remain at first base. So no harm, no foul. right? Not exactly. Another aspect of this rule is that any existing base runners have to stay put unless they're forced to the next base. Therefore, since the runner on second wasn't forced, he couldn't even advance to third, let alone score. Profar was extremely frustrated in this play's aftermath, and for good reason. After this line drive, Padres slugger Manny Machado struck out swinging, and then Eric Hosmer popped out to the shortstop, which meant that the inning scored with no runs crossing the plate. Taking advantage of this shift in momentum, the Twins scored 5 runs in the top of the 8th inning and cruised to a 7-4 win. If there's a silver lining to this unlucky umpire interference, it's that Profar hit a 3-run home run in the bottom of the 9th inning, but he could have had another RBI if Jerry Lane could have lifted his leg in time. The play underscored the notion that not only the players, but also the officials are part of the unpredictable theater that defines Major League Baseball. However, Profar's Padres squad ended up being all right, as they advanced to the National League Championship Series that season before losing to the Philadelphia Phillies. Are you enjoying this video about some of MLB's unluckiest moments? Be sure to hit that like button to let us know. And if you want more videos like these that dissect some of the most memorable aspects of America's pastime, click that subscribe button so you're the first to know whenever we make another upload. It isn't just umpires getting hit by line drives that have made for unlucky moments. Of course, there's a rich history of pitchers getting nailed by comebackers that are certainly unfortunate for them. However, during one MLB game in 2020, a pitcher getting hit by a comebacker actually worked out perfectly for him while producing the opposite outcome for the poor hitter. During the second inning of a game between the Kansas City Royals and Chicago White Sox, Chicago hitter Eloy Jimenez stepped up to the plate with a runner on first, 1 out, while Royals pitcher Jacob Junis was on the mound. Jimenez lined a slider on the outside corner up the middle in what appeared to be an easy base hit. However, the ball nicked off of Junis's cleat and ricocheted to the Royals' third baseman, who grabbed it cleanly and threw it to first base in time to get Jimenez out by half of a step. While this already would have been unfortunate for Jimenez, his woes were only beginning. After the out at first base was called, Junis began pleading to the umpires that the line drive didn't hit the ground at all before connecting with his foot, which meant that his third baseman catching the ball made for an out. And since that first baseman threw the ball to first base, where the White Sox's runner was, who then took off for second amid what he thought was a ground ball, that meant the base runner should have been ruled out. Unlike with Galarraga's almost perfect game, the umpires could use the help of instant replay to get the call right. And sure enough, Junis was right, the ball never hit the ground. Therefore, what should have been a base hit for Jimenez ended up being a double play. How's that for unlucky? It ended up being all right for the White Sox, as they ultimately defeated the Royals 9-2 in that game. Jimenez went hitless, however. Pitchers aren't the only people on the baseball field who are often in the line of fire. Hitters get plunked way more times by pitchers, and base runners will occasionally catch a stray shot. However, one absurd instance of this in 2017 is another one of those moments in baseball history that will almost certainly never happen again, and is extremely unlucky for the player it happened to. On April 4th, 2017, the Chicago Cubs were playing a road game against the St. Louis Cardinals. In the bottom of the 5th inning, Cardinals right fielder Stephen Piscotty came to the plate with 1 out with his team down 2-0. In a 3-1 pitch, Piscotty was plunked by a fastball in what appeared to be his rib cage. The right fielder clearly wasn't stoked about this, but it's what he signed up for by playing baseball, so he went to first base without making any fuss. But that's just where Piscotty's unlucky streak started. Once there were 2 outs in the inning, Piscotty took off for second base when Cubs pitcher Jake Arrieta threw a ball in the dirt that squirted a few feet away from his catcher. The catcher got to the ball and threw it to second base in an effort to catch Piscotty stealing. However, not only was Piscotty safe, but the ball never reached the shortstop Starlin Castro, because it hit Piscotty in nearly the exact same spot as where he'd been hit by a pitch just 2 batters prior before skittering away toward third base. This second rib shot clearly hurt Piscotty, as he had to lay down on second base for a few moments to gather himself before play continued. Getting hit 2 times in 1 inning is pretty ridiculous, right? But it doesn't end there. Just a couple of pitches later, Cardinals infielder Colton Wong hit a soft ground ball to second base. The infielder failed to field the ball cleanly, although it wouldn't have mattered because Wong was going to be safe at first base anyway. But Piscotty took this opportunity to round third base and head home. Javier Baez, who misplayed the grounder, noticed this, picked the ball up and fired it home, hoping to gun Piscotty down. And he gunned Piscotty down all right, albeit not in the way anybody had wanted. Instead, Baez's throw was errant and ended up dotting Piscotty in the side of the head while he was sliding. Piscotty, who was safe, remained face down on the ground for a few moments, clearly in pain. He was ultimately taken out of the game, seemingly still shaken up. He was ultimately removed from the game and diagnosed with a head contusion, not to be confused with a concussion, but returned to his team's lineup in their next game. When speaking about this incident, Cardinals starting pitcher Adam Wainwright said, "It was probably the roughest turn around the bases I've ever seen." We imagine he isn't alone in that regard. If there's one reason why Piscotty might have been feeling all right after this, it's that literally one day prior to this unlucky inning, he signed a 6-year, $33.5 million contract extension with the Cardinals. The baseball gods have a strange way of maintaining balance within their sport. While people were able to laugh off what happened to Piscotty because he was ultimately all right, the same can't be said for our next unlucky moment. On August 31st, 2007, St. Louis Cardinals slugger Juan Encarnacion stepped into the on-deck circle to pinch hit in the bottom of the 6th inning of a 4-3 game against the Cincinnati Reds. His Cardinals team was fresh off of a 2006 World Series title, and Encarnacion has produced a solid start to his 2007 campaign, batting .283 with 9 home runs and 47 RBIs. But that's where his season would end. Encarnacion's teammate Aaron Miles was at the plate hitting against Reds reliever John Countlangus. At one point in the at-bat, Countlangus threw an outside pitch that Miles fouled off. However, the line drive ultimately struck Encarnacion in the face, seemingly right in his left eye. The 11-year veteran collapsed to the ground and lay face down and unmoving for what felt like an eternity as St. Louis Busch Stadium went silent. Encarnacion ultimately got up on his own and walked into the Cardinals clubhouse while holding his left eye. He did not return to the game and was transported to a local hospital for x-rays. A couple of days later, the Cardinals reported that Encarnacion's vision in his left eye had slightly improved. However, there was still considerable swelling, as he had broken his orbital bone. The doctor who was working with Encarnacion noted that it was still too early to say whether he would regain full vision in that eye. "This is the worst trauma I've seen," the doctor, named George Paletta, said. He then offered a harrowing description of the injury by saying, "The socket is, in a way, like an ice cream cone. That thing is sort of shattered at this point. It's not as if there's one fracture or 2 fractures, it's as if an eggshell has cracked, basically. So there are multiple fracture lines and pieces of bone that are broken, and the way they fix that is to put a plate on it and reconstruct that socket so it's smooth again." Encarnacion had surgery in September, but recovery wasn't going well. By October, Encarnacion had regained only 24/100ths vision in his left eye. Where there was some hope that Encarnacion would be able to return for the next season, his vision never improved enough to the point where he was able to compete at a high enough level, despite his orbital bone eventually getting healed. Encarnacion missed the entire 2008 season, and since his contract was over at the end of that year and he wasn't still able to play, the 11-year veteran ultimately decided to retire, with that fateful on-deck appearance being the last time he ever stepped on a Major League Baseball field to compete. What happened to Encarnacion serves as a gruesome reminder that baseball can not only be an unlucky, but a downright brutal game that commends ultimate respect. The game is rife with unpredictable twists that can turn triumph into despair in the blink of an eye. A well-placed hit can be snatched by a diving fielder, an executed pitch can become a home run due to a gust of wind, or something much more serious than a mere outcome can occur at any given moment. Fortune plays a significant role in what happens on the baseball field, bringing a humbling reality to even the most talented players. Injuries, bad calls, and slumps can derail promising seasons, highlighting how quickly luck can shift. The statistics that highlight batting averages and earned runs are as much a testament to resilience as they are to skill, showcasing the struggle against fate. It's this unique combination of chance and challenge that elevates the game, making baseball not just a sport, but a reflection of life itself, full of uncertainties that deserve our deep respect and admiration.